How we doing? This is Destination Denver, Colorado, and today I'm here to give you 5 reasons why you should not move to Aurora, Colorado, and we're starting right now. Alright, this is Destination Denver, Colorado. I am your host, Jimmy Everetson. Listen, if you're interested in learning all the ins and outs, pros and cons to moving to or around Denver, Colorado, then this is a channel for you. So that subscribe button and notification icon popping up on your screen, make sure you click on that as I'm dropping new videos for you each and every week. And listen, as much as I love trying to be a little creative here on camera, I'm also a licensed mortgage lender covering the entire state of Colorado and teamed with some of Denver's most talented realtors. So the number and email popping up on your screen, know that I am always the person answering your phone calls, answering your texts, answering your emails, there when and if you need me. Now that we have that fun-filled stuff out of the way, let's get to what we're here for, and that is the 5 reasons you should not move to Aurora, Colorado. All right, so the first reason that you should not, or at least reconsider moving to Aurora, and this one might be obvious if you've Google mapped it already, but Aurora is east of Denver, and it is the farthest suburb from getting to the mountains. So if you're moving to Colorado and you're a big mountain person, you want to ski or snowboard or hike or bike, or that is one of the biggest things that you want to focus on when you get to Colorado, then Aurora, and especially certain parts of Aurora as you get farther east, might not be the best fit for you. So as an example, I live west of Denver in a town called Lakewood. I can get from my house to the foothills of the mountains in 10 to 15 minutes. There are certain parts of Aurora where that drive could be, let's say, as little as 30 to 35 minutes to as long as 45 minutes to an hour if there's no traffic. So you're talking about situations where you might want to get up to the foothills, you might want to get up to one of the ski resorts, and you're tacking an extra, let's just call it an hour plus drive just to get into the foothills, and then you've got another hour or two plus to get farther into the mountains to the place you're going. Is that a make or break? I would say that for the people that I have moving here that talk to me about, man, I want to spend as much time as I can in the mountains, that specifically, if that's the goal, if they want to spend their weekends in the mountains, then living in certain parts of Aurora is going to make that more challenging, and they're probably going to want to look to be at least as close to Denver. Even if they're on the east side of town, they're going to look to be as close to Denver as possible, if not moving to the west side of town, and of course being close to the mountains. The second reason not to move to Aurora, Colorado is its reputation for crime. Now, I want to be very clear about this because I think that reputation is, one, outdated, and I think two, and I've said this in other videos, I don't care where you go, short of a village of 5 people, and there's still going to be one jerk in those 5 people, but anywhere you go, there are going to be certain areas that you need to be more aware of, or certain areas that you just might not feel as comfortable in as others. Aurora is a pretty large suburb. It's geographically speaking the largest in the Denver metro area. So there's a lot of different communities within it. I've said in other videos, there are communities that have been around for 100 plus years, and then there are communities that have just been built in the last few months or last few years. So within that, you do have certain sectors that have had a long-standing reputation. Ooh, you don't want to go to that part of Aurora. Like I said, I live in Lakewood, and there are neighborhoods in Lakewood where you would say the same thing. I would tell a friend, I don't know if I would go live there. One of the areas, or one of the strips that you're going to be aware of when it comes to Aurora is Colfax Avenue. Colfax Avenue, one of the longest roads in all of America, stretches all the way across Colorado, and it stretches, obviously it goes through Lakewood and heads east out through Aurora as well. And there are strips of Colfax that have long had, you ask any local or native of Denver about Colfax Avenue, and they'll give you a look. Ooh, you don't want to go near Colfax. Well, that's accurate for certain stretches. There are certain parts of Colfax where I probably wouldn't walk by myself or with family and friends at night. At the same time, there are strips of Colfax. It's a busy road. So there's strips of Colfax with some of the best restaurants that you're going to want to go to art shows or art studios, apartments that have been built along it. So that reputation for Colfax doesn't just run in Aurora. People will say the same thing about West Colfax in Lakewood and stretching out into Golden. So All I would say as far as that reputation is that I would do your due diligence. I would check your crime stats, and always remember that the more dense the population, the higher crime stats tend to be. But there are certainly areas of Aurora that have earned a reputation over the years. Some of those areas have certainly improved over time. And the last thing I would add to this, to not be super long-winded, is that I think if you live in any community long enough, you will see stretches where neighborhoods can take swings. Perfect example for you. When I moved back to Denver in 2008, I bought a house over in an area called Sloan's Lake, which is just west of Denver. It's still part of Denver. And when I bought my townhome in 2010, the looks I got from people who said, "Oh my God, why would you buy a place in Sloan's Lake? That is a horrible area. It has a terrible reputation. It's dangerous." And there were parts of Sloan's Lake that, again, I probably wouldn't have gone to the lake in the middle of the night. But now, that was 2010, by 2013, 2014, Sloan's Lake was one of the most desired communities in all of Denver, and it continues to be to this day. So when it comes to these reputations, make your own observations, make your own judgments, ask your own questions. Don't listen to what someone on the internet said, "Oh, you don't want to live here." Do your due diligence, and you'll find the right spot for you and your people. The third reason you might not want to move to Aurora is that the cost of living and the cost of housing is on the rise. So as of the making of this video, owners of homes sat at about 60% of the community to obviously 40% renters. And Aurora, again, because of its size, high population, because of the amount of properties, all these different types, detached homes, townhomes, apartments, etc., Aurora is a pretty desirable place for people to live. And one of the big reasons is its affordability. And I certainly think that there are still pockets. When you compare Aurora to other suburbs, there is a level of affordability in Aurora that beats others. However, because of all the new construction, because of all the people that are continuing to move to Aurora, that cost, like many areas of Denver, continue to increase. It's not as cheap per se to live in Aurora as it might have been in the past, and that cost continues to increase. The other thing you need to consider is that as new homes and new buildings are constructed, those companies, they have to charge a certain amount if they're going to make a profit off of these homes. They have to build to a certain scale. So one of the issues we've seen, and Aurora is an example of it, is the ability to build affordable housing has been challenging. Now, obviously there are state and city and county mandated allowances, right? The communities have to build a certain amount of genuinely affordable houses. But if we're just talking about non-government controlled, if we're just talking about homes that are built that the average Joe can purchase or rent, that gets a little challenging, because what we're seeing in these different communities is that builders are having to build at a certain level of luxury. And I'm not talking about mansions, but at a certain level that then requires a certain amount of cost, whether it's rent or purchase. That price, that amount goes up. So the affordability becomes more and more of an issue. That's one of the biggest things that is affecting Aurora right now. You're seeing it incrementally. It's not just the cost of housing, it's also the cost of living, it's the cost of goods. That's kind of a Denver issue, but Aurora was a place that it was kind of that last bastion where you can get there and you can find some affordability, and that window is to some extent shrinking. The fourth reason not to move to Aurora, Colorado, traffic stinks. Now, listen, you could say the traffic stinks throughout Denver, and that's quite possible. But the thing is, Aurora being as big as it is, as stretched out as it is, and with the population growth that it's having, the infrastructure has to keep up, and the roads have a challenge keeping up. So you can be in these pockets of Aurora where you're a good 15 to 20 minutes away from a highway or freeway or a fast moving road that can get you out of Aurora. So there are times where you might have what looks like maybe a 10-15 minute drive, but in Aurora it becomes a 45-minute drive because of traffic getting backed up, because you're on roads that have lights, you're not on a highway. And also, again, because of its size, if you're out near the Southlands Mall community that we've talked about, that if that traffic backs up, you're already 30 to 45 minutes from, call it downtown. Now add some traffic to it, and that drive easily becomes an hour, hour 15, hour 30. So traffic can be a big issue for people living in Aurora. Again, being as big as it is, certain communities won't deal with it as much as others, and it will also be determined by your commute, but definitely something you're going to want to be aware of if you're thinking about making that move to that city. I feel like I had this little stumble there at the end. Hopefully you just picked up on that. And the fifth reason not to move to Aurora, Colorado, it's flat. Now, I know I started this out by telling you that you're far away from the mountains, but when we talk about the plains of Denver, and genuinely, Denver, people think of Denver and they think, oh, this mountain town. And I mean, the mountains are behind us, but we're not in the mountains. Denver is a high plains desert, flat as can be. And Aurora is the same. So, is it terribly worse than it is on the west side of town? Probably not. But Aurora tends to be a little bit windier. Snows, statistically speaking, just a tad more than it does on the west side of town. And I think because of that wind, you just get more of a chill on the Aurora side of town. So your views a little bit different. Obviously, you're farther from the mountains, so you don't get as pretty views as you might on the west side of town. Gets a bit windier. Snow could be a pain in the butt. This is a great time to mention that if you're looking to buy a house, you should definitely look for one with a north-facing driveway, or excuse me, south-facing driveway, because I just said it backwards. Just take that mental note, south-facing driveway. The sun hits it, you'll appreciate me later. I have a north-facing driveway, it sucks. Just know that. A little windy, a little snowy, and driveways. And I'll say a little bonus, the sixth thing you need to know, it's not really a reason not to move to Aurora, but just know as you move out here, people that grew up in Denver, they tend to have, it's kind of this lighthearted east versus west battle. And what I mean by that is people that grew up on the west side of town, such as me, we're familiar with the suburbs of the west side of town. We've spent time in Arvada and Littleton and Wheat Ridge. Whereas people who grew up in Aurora, they have been all over Aurora. They know it well. So people that grew up on the east side of town tend to have the desire to stay on the east side of town. People that grew up on the west side of town tend to stay on the west side of town. They tend to like it. Sometimes you will get people, I almost venture to say that people on the east side will come west more often. The challenge of this, and a reason that Aurora is as popular as it is, we've talked about how big it is. It stretches. There's just more room for people, whereas on the west side of town, we run into the mountains. So if we're already over here, we're kind of the lucky ones. Do people on the west side of town look down on the east side of town? I mean, literally we do, because from an elevation standpoint, some of us are just higher up, but not personally. We don't hold it against them. Talk about just going off on a random tangent at the end of a video, but I just thought it was important for you guys to know. Well, listen, if you have questions about any of these reasons, that's a great time to hit me up. The number, email popping up on your screen. I'm always the person answering those phone calls, answering those texts, answering those emails. There when and if you need me. This is Destination Denver, Colorado. I am your host, Jimmy Everts. That was 5 reasons not to move to Aurora, Colorado, and then a 6th where I just randomly rambled for you. Until I see you next time, peace.